Well, a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Uckfield Business Podcast with me, Ian Noble, your Chamber Director here in Uckfield. As you can see, I've got no one with me just yet, flying solo today because my co-presenters are either on holiday or in hospital. So hope Claire's having a nice holiday and hope Chris gets his minor op sorted and we can go from there. And I hope one of them, at least, is back with me next month. But we have a very special guest for you coming up on the pod very shortly, and I'll introduce you in a moment or two. But before we get to that, just a few words about the Uckfield Business Awards that are coming up in the next few months. We're very excited to be hosting the Uckfield Business Awards once again here in our town. We have no fewer than 15 award categories for people to enter. Now, all the information that you need to know is on the website, the main Uckfield Business Awards website, and that's what it looks like if you're watching live or on a catch-up and not listening just on a pod. But the address is uckfieldbusinessawards.com, quite simple. And there's some great drop-downs on there where you can go into the various categories. There really is something for everyone in this year's awards. So we have things like Best New Business, Best Rural Business, Best Place to Eat and Meet. So that's all for all the restaurants and cafes and that kind of thing. Sole Trader of the Year, Best Green Business, Investment in People Award. I won't go through them all, but there's quite a lot of awards. And every single one of these awards is very generously sponsored by a local business. And we're very grateful. And I'm not going to mention any of them other than our headline sponsor in a moment, because then I'll get accused of missing others out. But each one of those sponsors, we're very grateful to them. Not only do they sponsor the award, but they also judge the awards. So let me just give you one example, if I can. So I'm going to mention my friend Mark Arno at Carvilles. And Carvilles are sponsoring the Young Employee Award. That's for anyone under the age of 25 that's demonstrated some really good performance at work. And Carvilles, Mark and his team will go and interview those entrants for that award. And they will then determine their top three and their winner. And all the sponsors will do just that. And then all the winners of the business awards will go towards the main Business of the Year award. And that is sponsored by CJ Thorne & Co. once again. So we're very grateful to them for being our headline sponsor. Now, there's two ways to enter. There's one way to enter. You can enter the awards yourself as a business, and we'd really encourage businesses in Uckfield to have a good look at the awards and then decide who's going to enter for what. And then you could also nominate for the awards. So if you've got a favourite business, you're a member of the public, or you want to nominate another business, you can do so really easily by going onto the website and nominating. And that will prompt us to invite that business to enter that particular category. So a few dates for your diary. The nominations are open now and they close on the 7th of June. And the entries are open now and they close on the 21st of June. And then it all comes together in a big gala black tie dinner at the East Sussex National on Thursday, the 26th of September, later this year. So we're really looking forward to that. So I wanted to give that a plug this morning on this pod. And if you're watching back afterwards, do go and have a look at the awards website. And there'll be more about this in our communications for the Chamber as we progress in the next few weeks and months or so. So without further ado, let's get into the pod today. Let's get into the main subject of what we're talking about. And I'm delighted that joining me today is Kevin Markwick of the Picture House fame. Kevin, your microphone is muted. I'll mention that in passing just before you stop speaking and we can't hear you. And you're unmuted.
Hello.
So welcome. Welcome to our podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm full of beans, thank you. Are you?
I'm pretty good today, thanks. Yeah, not bad at all.
Good.
You're full of beans, sitting, I think, from your background in your restaurant, the
Yes.
Beach House restaurant. Is that right?
Yeah, with all my lovely posters behind me from the collection that I nicked over the years.
Yeah, there's some great posters. If you've never been into the restaurant, of course, everyone in Uckfield listening to this will have been into your restaurant at some point. But if you haven't, you do need to go in and look at the posters as well as eat the food and drink their beer and wine and that kind of thing. So, Kelly, what can you see from where you're sitting at the moment? Is there much happening around you?
Well, I'm in the back section of the restaurant at the moment, so it's quiet, but we're quite busy down the front.
Yeah, excellent. Good.
Ladies
Good.
and gentlemen coming in for coffee and all that kind of stuff.
Now, we were talking pre-show, Kev, about the cinema and about you and your family and the business a little bit. You've been in Uckfield for quite a while. I think you said 1964, 2 years before England won the World Cup. And,
I don't remember it, sadly,
since.
But yeah.
You know, you haven't been able to escape Uckfield. So tell us how you got into the business then, first of all, running a cinema.
Well, okay, so my father was in the business. He actually started work he started as a rewind boy in Eastbourne at the Picturedrome in 1948, and always dreamt of owning his own cinema. And he worked his way up because he was a chief projectionist at the Gaiety in Eastbourne. These are all names that probably don't mean anything to anybody anymore.
No.
But a chief projectionist was a pretty groovy position, because projectionist remains actually, for those that still can do it, a skilled job. And in those days, you had a full team in the projection box. You had the chief, the first, the second, the rewind boy. It was a proper full-time job, because the reels only lasted 20 minutes, so you had to keep changing from one projection to the other. However, he always wanted his own cinema. He got out of the business for a while, ran a boarding house actually in Eastbourne as well, bizarrely. But he was so obsessed with having a cinema, he built a cinema in the basement of this boarding house in Eastbourne, in a little 16mm projector. And then in 1964, actually it was 1963, in November 1963, Percy Reynolds, the guy who had the lease, died, and the place came on the market. So my mum and dad came over to look at it. I'd just been born. We were living in Polegate. And they actually came over the day Kennedy was assassinated.
Goodness.
Yeah,
well, wasn't that 1963? Wasn't that the winter of discontent?
Yeah, November 1963. They came over on the Saturday to look at the cinema with the widow of Percy Reynolds, and and then managed to take over in February 1964. So I was.
And we've got a picture of it here. This is what it looked like.
That's the time we took over. Yeah, again, somebody sent me that picture fairly recently. You can see the Queen walking past there, and there's Michael Caine coming down the stairs. But it was one single screen then, 500 seats actually at the time. It had a hell of a history getting going. I mean, there's a podcast to be done on the history of the cinema itself. It took a long time to get it open and established, because it was built in 1916, but didn't actually start showing films until 1920, because there was another cinema in Uckfield, which was the Foresters Hall.
Oh yes,
in Harcourt Row, on the corner of Harcourt Road and Thingy Road. But in those days, you needed the magistrate to give you a cinematograph license, and unfortunately, the magistrate owned the cinema in Harcourt Road, and obviously refused to give the new cinema, which had been built at the top of the high street, a license. Can you imagine that kind of chicanery going on now? Not at all.
No, not at all.
But yeah, there were town meetings, and the pitchforks were sharpened, and it caused a big fuss. And then finally, so what they did was they used it as a garrison theatre for the troops, because obviously 1916, right in the middle of the First War, there were lots of troops stationed around on their way to be slaughtered in France, and so they used it as a garrison theatre. And then finally, through a lot of machinations, it opened in 1920, and the only time after that it ever closed was when we converted it from one screen to two in 1978, 79.
And that's picture on the far right we've got there. So that was when you put the second screen in 1978. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, again, to give you a bit of background, forgive me if it's a bit dull, but cinema was declining very rapidly through the 1960s and into the 1970s for a number of reasons. Television. People's houses got nicer. You didn't need to go out and get warm or have an inside toilet.
Go on.
and the news was a big thing in those days, because particularly in the 40s and early 50s, you couldn't see the news in the same way that you could in the cinema. So can you imagine, in 1948, 1,000 million tickets were sold a year to go to the cinema, like 1 billion tickets.
Yeah, go.
By 1984, that number had dropped to 48 million. So it was a vertiginous drop. If the cinema industry had 1,000 million admissions a year, I'd be doing this podcast from my hot tub in Vegas. It's
I do remember that, because I grew up in Bromley in Kent, and we had two cinemas, the Odeon and the Astor. And the Astor closed.
Yeah.
The Astor closed. The Odeon, I think, is still there, but it might be called something else now. I don't know. But so it was the days of the Saturday morning pictures and things. You had to sit in alternate rows and that kind of stuff.
So what happened was, when my dad took the place in 1964, he immediately scooped out a lot of the seats, went down to like 310 seats just to make them more comfortable, put in new projection, because it was an utter flea pit when he took it, a real flea pit. And that sort of staved off the inevitable for a while, but by 1976, 77, it was apparent that we needed to do something, and that was to convert it from one screen into two, because the economics mean that, because in the 40s and perhaps the 50s, people went to the cinema anyway. Didn't matter what was on, they would go.
Right.
Whereas by the time you got to the 1970s onwards, people would go and see the film. So therefore, the more films you have on, the more people you would get. I mean, people rarely turn up at a cinema without knowing what they're going to see, like they would have done in the 1940s. So that was the economics of it. The more screens you have, the more money you're going to take, which is why we ended up. And actually, the turning point in the UK was 1984, which was also the low point, when the Americans came over and opened the Point in Milton Keynes, the first multiplex in the UK. Okay. And that was the sort of start of the upward trend in admissions, which has continued, well, apart from COVID. It's gone down a bit since COVID, but it's going back up again. And I think we got back up to, just before COVID, we got back up to, so it was 48 million, I think I said. It was around that number in 84. And then by 2019, we were up to 165 million. So,
and have your own figures in Uckfield reflected the national trends in the same
more or
way?
less? We've always punched above our weight, because Dad was very keen to make the cinema as nice as he could over the years. So not least the twinning, that was a big thing. He borrowed quite a bit of money. It was quite a burden at the time for him to do. Unfortunately, it coincided with my O levels. So
that was you in the picture we saw there. That last picture.
That was a couple of years later, actually. 1980. But I didn't pass two. I think I've got 2 grade 2 CSEs, because it was way more interesting being down at the cinema than it was going to school.
This was happening.
So when we converted to 2 screens, and that really did, because the other thing about it was there was no gents inside toilet in the cinema. I grew up as a kid. I would usher and help out on a Saturday afternoon, and it would be, "Where's the toilet, mate?" And I go, "Well, it's outside, round to the left and up the end of the passage." So it needed desperately upgrading when you consider it was a 1916 cinema, and we needed better facilities. It needed better seats. It needed new toilets, because the ladies' toilet was one sit down and that was it. So actually, what we did was we built toilets in the back of the old stalls. I mean, that's kind of the basis of it. But it saved us. It was a stroke of, it was absolutely necessary, and it kept us going for quite some time. So that was, and we saw a big upturn in business at that point. Well, and really the next big thing was, that would be, I did a big refurb in 88, 89, which made him a bit grumpy. And then, he died in 1994. So I've been doing it myself now for, it'll be 30 years this year. So almost as long as he did it before me. So, I literally grew up in a cinema. So I'm kind of marinated in it. That's what I say.
Yeah, and you made some real significant changes recently, haven't you?
We did
the COVID time to refurb.
We did big refurbishment about 8 or 9 years ago, which was very significant, and that really did that improved business still further. We dragged it, even more into the. In fact, we did it at the same time we bought the restaurant, so it'd be actually nearly 10 years ago. Because I was going to put this big extension on the side of the cinema, and then to improve the F&B offering, but actually then this came up. So I diverted some of the restaurant days into the restaurant. It made more sense to me to have a restaurant rather than an extra 3 feet on building I could put a couple of tables in. But yeah, so that made a big difference when we put in, more leg room, bigger seats, refurbished the foyer. I think you've got a picture there, the foyer, the refurbished foyer.
Yes.
But no, and then that's it on the left there.
Yeah.
That was quite a lot. That was a lot of work, and actually it was a very expensive refurbishment. And then the next thing during COVID, I ripped all the seats out of Screen 3 and put in these recliners that you can see there.
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
It's without doubt the most successful thing I've ever done. It's so popular. Because
what made you do that then, Kevin? What made you take that step? Because that was must have been a significant investment for you.
Those seats are about 650 quid each, and there's only 50 of them, but still a fair amount of money. We had to rebuild the floor, and I don't know. I just kind of knew, I think business can, I don't think business is always about data, is it? It's also about instinct as well, I think, and especially as I do know the business very well, and I'm not the first person to have come up with that idea. I mean, it's been the idea of supremely comfortable cinema is not a new idea. I mean, Everyman have been doing it for a while with their sofas, and even AMC in the US, they halved their capacity and tripled their turnover by just putting in recliners. Not quite like that, but simply because you have to have a good reason to leave the house, don't you? You don't need to go to the cinema to see things. Well, I mean, I would disagree. I think you should go to the cinema to see things because it's the best way to see a film. But, you still need a good reason to, if it's not comfortable and it's not clean and the picture and sound aren't dim, and, people are spending, good money. And I think that's the secret to it, is that people absolutely love it. They put the footrests up, they order food, they have wine and beer, and it's a proper night out. And you combine all of that with the restaurant.
It's an experience, yeah. Would you
it's
say
an experience? Yeah. That's the word, experiential, isn't it? That's the buzzword now.
You touched on this already. But what gave you the idea of buying the cinema? Well, you said 10 years ago, opposite the cinema itself.
You mean the restaurant? What gave you the idea of the restaurant?
Buying the restaurant, yeah.
Well, because my wife is a chef, actually. Tansy is a chef, and she's a big part of the business. And my partner in the business, and she's a chef. She's a chef by trade.
Right.
She worked. She was working in London restaurants. In the early 80s, at the forefront of that.
Oh, right.
Remember the nouvelle cuisine? Digits de poisson avec petit pois.
Indeed.
With one pea and a fish finger, and it was 25 quid, and you had to have a McDonald's on the way home because you were hungry. So we've had restaurants before. We had a restaurant called Cane's at the top of the high street here, which turned into the Maximum Diner.
Right.
In fact, if anyone interested, read the book about Maximum Diner, about how the guy basically, I didn't do a great deal to sell it to him. There you go. Try not to use a horrible word.
Yeah, no swearing on this show.
Yeah. So we had that for a few years, and then for some reason Tansy kept producing children, and so and then we had Markwick's restaurant. Actually, we took over the old Budlett's tea rooms.
I remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah, that's the dark, dingy tea rooms that used to be up there, and we converted that into Markwick's restaurant, which did really well. And then we had a sort of some family tragedy, and so we gave that up for a while. And then, so we it's not like we haven't got any catering experience. We do. We know all about it, and so when the restaurant came up, when Luna came up, I thought, well, it's obvious. Because in fact, actually, this is all coming back to me now. When the 2 months after we opened Markwick's, much to my utter chagrin, DeMarco's opened, which was where we are now.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, at the time, I couldn't afford that building. I think it went for £1 million or something. That whole the whole building.
Yeah.
And the Maltbys, converted flats and did all this stuff. And they did a really good job, and they did a brilliant job. And the restaurant was lovely, but of course it was opposite my cinema, which is the most frustrating thing. Yes. We were 1.5 miles up the road, and I couldn't leverage, as the Americans say, the F&B part because we were too far away. And then I was watching all my customers come out of the cinema and go over to one of the rival restaurants. It's infuriating.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they did a brilliant job, and they did. It was very successful. And then I think it changed hands a couple of times, became simply Italian for a while, and then Yvonne took it, and Luna for a while.
I do remember those times.
Yeah. And then it came up, and I thought, this is no brainer. Got to absolutely have it. Because we were in a better financial position to do it.
Yeah.
And it was
really interesting. Really interesting, because I hadn't appreciated the depth of experience that Tansy had in the sector. And obviously all of your other ventures. And it must have been hard for you to watch all that happening under your nose.
It was infuriating.
The cinema,
because we'd also just spent a lot of time and money rebuilding this tea room into a really lovely restaurant. Yeah. And then it was so frustrating. But she's supremely talented. I mean, she doesn't cook anymore because it's a big operation. Big operation. We feed 130, 140 people on a Saturday. So whereas Tansy's skill is actually the individual, which we did at Markwick's, which was brilliant and people loved. But that's not really. But she's brilliant at coming up with menus, and they work together really well. So.
Well, it's been a success for you then, the restaurant and the cinema together. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
and I think it's hard to imagine Uckfield without it now. Those two things together.
I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a risk at the time. Banks are very keen to tell you, aren't they, that the businesses that go out, the more restaurants go out of business, I think, than any other type of business. But I just was confident. I knew it would work. Because it's in a unique position. It's like absolutely in the zone, because I know, one or two of the others have struggled over the years, and despite some really good work, because you're just off that axis, it's sort of, and with the decor and the making it film themed and coming up with daft stuff like the Kevin Bacon burger, and also the, the deal that you can have dinner and a cinema ticket and all that kind of stuff. It works really. I mean, it's hard work. Don't get me wrong.
Sure, I get that. But it does work. That's the main thing. It does work.
Absolutely works. And this is what I say to my contemporaries in the cinema, that own other cinemas. You don't, especially the sort of anchor tenant idea where you've got a cinema and a shopping centre. Well, I'm going to be the anchor tenant, and I'm going to wait for Nando's, and I'm going to wait for Pizza Express or whatever. Well, actually, don't do that. Open the restaurant yourself, But the key to it, and this is really important, is that it's a standalone restaurant. The cinema doesn't need the restaurant, and the restaurant doesn't need the cinema. However, put them together, and they are both better for it. That's
excellent. Yeah, good stuff. Now, some would describe you, Kevin, I guess, people that know you well and not so well, as a bit of an entrepreneur. You strike me as someone who wants a new project a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Uckfield isn't your only cinema, is it? Or is it?
Well, no, it is at the moment, actually, because we just lost the other one.
Tell us about what happened in Birmingham then, very briefly.
Well, we took the electric came up in Birmingham, and then and for some reason I horribly misjudged the distance between Uckfield and Birmingham.
You thought it'd take you 5 minutes, did you?
I don't know what I was thinking. No, but actually, anyway, it's a famous old cinema. And it was in the end, it was a bit of a money pit. And what I did was it was a roll of the dice. It was the fag end of a lease. There was about 3 years left on the lease. And because it was within the act and all the rest of it, I was kind of fairly confident that I could get a new lease. However, what happened was the owners decided, they're determined to knock it down and build a block of flats, basically. So discretion was the better part of valor, sort of retreat, run away. We were starting to do really well as well. It was kind of really turning the corner because we did a lot of retro stuff up there. We still showed 35mm film there, which was great, except I'm the only idiot in the organization that knows how to do it. So I'd have to schlep up there to show film because nobody shows film.
It's been delayed because Kevin's stuck on the motorway.
Yeah, well, because actually my daughter moved up to run it as well. We were all in. We were absolutely all in. And it was an amazing place. But unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to fight because the owners handed control of the building to the developers, which meant that I was actually fighting on the boss level for all you gamers out there. It's like their lawyers are going to be way better than my lawyers. And, I just thought, cut my losses and get out, and we're sort of clean and free. And dilapidations, which they were waving at me, would have been absurd. So, yeah, but I've got another one coming soon, very soon.
Okay. Are you able to tell us any more about that?
I'm not sure this would be the right forum. It's a sort of open secret, actually, in the business, and it's much, much closer. It's within 15, 20 miles. So that's going to be a lot easier to run.
Yeah, well, I'm intrigued. I'll be very interested to learn what happens there for sure. Excellent.
Yeah, no, we'll do okay with that one. It's a sort of standard, normal cinema, not this kind of heritage thing. Okay. I thought, because I can't imagine anyone down here has been following it, but as soon as we closed in Birmingham, the balloon went up.
Right.
We've been making the news, but I was gagged by everyone else on the television and on the radio telling my story completely inaccurately. But anyway.
Okay. Now, you spent quite a bit of time in the States recently. You just got back from a trip. You told me when we chatted about it, it's all work, and all the rest of it. So what happens out in America? What's so vital that you got out there for?
I was out for a couple of weeks. I like to go to Los Angeles. My best mate lives out there, so I'll go and stay with him for a bit. But the main reason for going was CinemaCon in Las Vegas, which is this sort of NATO, hilariously they're called, the National Association of Theatre Owners in the US. And it's 4 or 5 days in Vegas where the studios come along and they present their wares, do the dance of the 7 veils. Ooh, here's our lovely films for the next 12 months. And fair amount of drinking, fair amount of bad behavior. And there's also, which I like actually, is the trade show, projectors and sound and speakers and really nerdy stuff like that, which I enjoy. So it's good. And we saw, there was the thing about, because we also have one in Barcelona in June, which is the European one, right. It's in Europe. But in the Vegas one, we get all the movie stars come, because obviously it's only a 30-minute flight, 40-minute flight from Los Angeles. So sure. we had them all there this year. We had Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy and all the cast of Beetlejuice and all the cast that, that's actually quite good.
Selfies for you and these famous people?
No.
Nothing like that.
Doesn't do anything for me. Yeah. And generally, it's bad form to approach. Especially it's an industry thing, so it's sort of bad form really. And lots of interesting presentations. Wicked. Right. That's Universal are hanging their shirt on that one. I don't know. It should do all right, shouldn't it? I don't know.
It's done all right in the West End, isn't it? So
Oh yeah. But this is a 2-part movie, which seems like a slightly odd thing to do to me. But everything this Christmas will be trumped in the UK by Paddington 3, which will, by any measure, be the biggest film of the year.
You heard it here first in Uckfield. Paddington 3.
Yeah, well, Paddington, the first Paddington, which was, I thought it would do well, but nobody thought it was going to do that kind of business. It was so huge, and it was our biggest film that year. And same with Paddington 2. They love it. People love it. It's a good, it's wonderful. But yeah, Vegas is good. And then we got Barcelona in June, which is a bit more laid back, a bit more tapas. It's tough. It's tough in the film business.
I'm sure it's tough. It sounds tough. It's a tough gig.
It really is. I suffer to bring Uckfield. All of this, I really do have to suffer from time to time.
Well, we're very grateful for your suffering, Kevin. In Uckfield. You touched on this other cinema project, but what next for Uckfield Picture House or restaurant? Any other plans?
It's
business as usual now for a while.
We reseated Screen 1, which hasn't gone entirely well because they sent the wrong size seats. So I'm having to fix that, make them a bit bigger, which means we lose even more. Not really. I don't think. I mean, always trying to think of things. I think the next thing probably is more about reintroducing some of the retrospective stuff, and I'm actually going to put film back in. I mean, do you think anyone will care? Really? I don't know.
They might do.
They might. No one else will be able to do it so I'm going to put a 35mm projector.
Well, I think you should. I think it'll be, it's something that you could probably say is a bit of a USP for you locally.
Yeah. That's what we
not?
got to find. Yeah. But we're always improving the F&B offering. We're always trying to improve the sort of channels. It's kind of boring business stuff, like trying to make booking online easier, trying to make buying a ticket easier, all that kind of stuff that you have to keep on top of. But I don't know. I mean, if anybody's got any suggestions, that would be great, other than leave now.
And you've got a membership scheme. I've been a member for some time. You'd be pleased to know. Tell us a little bit about the membership scheme and how that works for anyone that's not
a member. The membership scheme is really important to us for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, it generates revenue, which is good. But we have 3 tiers: a silver, the imaginatively silver, a bronze, silver, and gold. I fought very hard with the team to kind of come up with more interesting names, but no, that's what we ended up with. Say what it is. That's right. Yeah. And basically, it's sort of like a 1-person membership, a 2-person membership, and then the top tier, gold, which they all thought I was mad when I came up with that one. £400 a year. No one's going to buy that. And, it's our bestseller. Absolutely our bestseller. Yeah. Which gives you 2 tickets anytime to any film.
The Martini effect. Anytime, any place,
Anytime, any place. Like the old...
Martini, wasn't it? Or Shinzano? One of the two. Yeah.
No, anytime, any place, anywhere. There's a wonderful world you can share. It's the right one. It's the light one. It's Martini.
There we are. It was Martini. Yeah. You got there. Very good. Very good. Very good. I just we're going to finish in a minute, Kevin, but one of the things I think your cinema and restaurant actually does, it brings, it's a jewel in the crown for Uckfield. So, congratulations to you. I mean that in all seriousness.
Yeah.
How much importance does it place on your, I suppose, conscience, business acumen, if you like, around bringing people into the town? It brings people in, it adds to the economy. Is that important to you?
Yes, very, very important. I'm very proud and mindful of, I don't want to overstate our importance, but I think we bring between 140 and 160,000 people into the town every year, which is it's a significant number. I have no evidence to show that, the rest of the economy benefits, but I suspect it must do. I would have thought so. No, and also it's the sense of, I'm always actually quite moved when we do things and I talk to people and I go out and I do a lot of talks to like the Women's Institute and things like that. We do a little history talk. Just how the sense of ownership that the town and the people around have, it's their cinema and they love it,
Exactly.
And I actually find that quite moving. I think it's, I'm really pleased about that and I'm really proud of it. I'm really, really proud of what we bring to the town. And it's sort of, like I say, I don't want to sort of overstate our importance, but I think it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations to you. Listen,
Thank
you for sharing today. It's been really interesting chatting with you.
Like I said, I could talk for England, me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you could and should. But stay with us, won't you, while we just go through a few parish notices for the chamber. You mentioned the phrase earlier about the cinema punches above its weight, and I think we as a chamber punch above our weight for the size of the town with over 200 members and events on every month, both in person and virtually. And the virtual events have stayed as a legacy of the pandemic. And the next one is on Wednesday, the 1st of May. We do this between 9 and 10 a.m. Just dial into the Zoom link. All members get sent the link automatically. And any non-members are welcome to join, but they must email us first, of course. And we're delighted that on the 1st of May, we have the wonderfully named Flavia Mello-Dewey from the East Sussex County Council. She champions a programme about well-being at work. And she's spoken at a breakfast before now, but she's back joining us online next month. And then we go to our members meeting. Now, these are the jewel in our crown for a chamber. The spring members meeting is going to be at Halstead Place Hotel. We're really excited about this one. They've recently joined the chamber, the hotel. This is where the Queen used to stay when she used to visit your cinema, Kevin, back in the 60s.
Oh, yeah. She always went for the cheap seats, which was funny. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
They've got pictures up of the Queen in the hotel. It's going to be a great night. And our speakers, our guest speakers, and this is relevant to any business, no more so than cinema, I guess, and restaurants, is East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service. You know, give businesses tips and advice on, basically keep your business fire safe and avoid that horrible thing that could happen to businesses if they're not careful.
Yeah, it's very important.
We might even have a fire engine there. And we're all big kids at heart, so in the fire engine. So, any member can sign up to this. It is a members-only event. But, of course, if you're not a member, you can join the chamber and come along to that one. Or if you join now, there's a complimentary play that event. We then move on to our next event, which is the next podcast. And the next podcast, hopefully these two people flanking me there in that image, Chris and Claire, are going to join me on that occasion. And we're going to be talking about the Business Awards, because when we get to the end of the May, we will have just 3 weeks before those Business Award entries close. And therefore, we want to really remind people of the categories. And we'll go into a bit more detail on the next pod. We've then got another online event. And then we have a next breakfast event, which is at the Highlands Inn on the 21st of June. And that's open to anyone. And then, Kevin, we haven't got a slide for this, but we're going to come to your restaurant on the 18th of October for a breakfast.
Hooray!
And Tansy always does a really good breakfast for us in the Picture House restaurant. So we look forward to that in October.
She's a wizard with a tin opener.
Oh, unbelievable. Those beans straight onto the plate, none on the floor or anything. So there are the events coming up. All the links and everything you need to about them on the chamber website, of course. I hope I haven't forgotten anything other than to thank our producer guy, Gordon Manklow, in the background. And we'll do the next show on the 30th of May. So, Kevin, I think you're off to the football tonight, aren't you? Is that right?
Oh, yeah. More in hope than expectation against Man City.
See the mighty Brighton Albion lose to Man City.
We may yet, like we did last season, affect the title race we beat Arsenal 3-0 at the Emirates last season.
I remember that game, yeah.
Which put a crimp in the title race. So maybe tonight.
Well, I'll be watching on Sky, and maybe you and I can come back and we'll do a podcast for Palace and Brighton one day, and we'll chat about
that'd be fun. Yeah, that would be fun.
Cinema and business and the like. But anyway, Kevin Markwick, thank you for joining me today, and thank you to anyone watching, and thank you to anyone that's listened on the podcast. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.